What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved, kindest, and most private actors finally reaches his breaking point on live television? What happens when a man known for his humility, his generosity, and his genuine kindness is pushed too far by someone who mistakes cruelty for cleverness? Today, we're diving into the shocking moment that had Keanu Reeves storming off The View after Joy Behar's disrespectful comments, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the entertainment world absolutely buzzing. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a story about dignity, about respect, and about the moment even the kindest person on earth decides enough is enough. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you won't believe how this whole situation unfolded. The studio lights were blazing hot that Thursday morning as Keanu Reeves settled into the familiar guest chair on The View. The legendary actor, known for his iconic roles in The Matrix, John Wick, and Speed, had agreed to this appearance as part of his media tour for a new, deeply personal project. Unlike the typical Hollywood press junket, this film was something he had poured his heart and soul into, a passion project that had taken years to bring to the screen. He'd been looking forward to this appearance, especially since The View had a massive audience that might not typically seek out his more intense, independent work. But something felt different today. The energy in the room was tense, and Joy Behar seemed unusually agitated, even before the cameras started rolling. The morning started like any other at The View studios. Keanu Reeves arrived early, dressed in his characteristic casual style, a simple jacket, a t-shirt, looking every bit the humble, grounded actor that fans had come to adore. He exchanged pleasantries with the crew, signed a few autographs, and prepared for what he expected to be a standard promotional interview. Joy Behar sat at the main desk with her co-hosts, shuffling through her notes with visible irritation. As the show's theme music faded and the cameras rolled, Whoopi Goldberg offered the standard warm welcome that viewers had come to expect. But there was already an undercurrent of tension that seemed to emanate specifically from Joy's direction. She had that look in her eyes, the one that regular viewers knew meant she was ready to stir the pot. "Keanu, thank you so much for being here." Whoopi began with genuine warmth. "We're so excited to talk about your new project." Keanu Reeves nodded politely, offering that signature humble smile that had captivated audiences for decades. "Thank you for having me," he replied in that distinctive, gentle voice. "It's always a pleasure." But before Whoopi could continue with her planned questions, Joy Behar jumped in with what would prove to be the first of many interruptions. "You know, Keanu, I have to ask, and I know our viewers are curious about this too. You've built this reputation as one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. But honestly, doesn't that get exhausting? I mean, all that kindness, all that humility. It seems a little performative, doesn't it?" The question hung in the air like a lead balloon. The other hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances, and you could practically feel the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Keanu's smile flickered for just a moment, but he maintained his composure. "I don't think kindness is something that gets exhausting, Joy. It's just how I try to live my life." Keanu responded, his tone measured but with a slight edge that anyone paying attention would have noticed. Joy, however, either didn't pick up on the warning signs or simply chose to ignore them. She leaned forward with that smirk that her critics knew all too well. "Oh, come on, Keanu. We've all seen the videos. You giving up your seat on the subway. You buying ice cream for fans. You donating millions to charity. It's almost too perfect. Don't you worry that people think it's all an act? That you're just playing the nice guy because it's good for your brand?" The studio fell silent. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained calm. "I don't do those things for recognition, Joy. I do them because they feel like the right thing to do. I don't think about my brand when I'm helping someone. I just think about helping someone." Sonny Hostin, sensing the growing tension, tried to redirect the conversation. "Keanu, let's talk about your new film. The role seems really challenging and different from what we've seen you do recently." But Joy wasn't finished. In fact, she was just getting started. And what came next would prove to be the catalyst for everything that followed. "You know what I find interesting, Keanu?" Here you are, this incredibly successful actor, but you seem to have such a problem with being honest about who you really are. I mean, you've made millions from these big blockbuster franchises, and yet you act like you're just some regular guy. It's a little disingenuous, don't you think? The accusation was delivered with Joy's typical bluntness, but this time she had clearly crossed a line. Keanu's eyes flashed with something that went beyond mere annoyance. This was personal now. I think you have a fundamental misunderstanding of who I am and why I do what I do, Keanu replied, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone that anyone who knew him would recognize as a warning. I've never claimed to be anything other than who I am. I take my work seriously, and I try to treat people with respect. I don't see anything disingenuous about that. Joy laughed. Actually laughed in a way that came across as dismissive and condescending. Oh, please, Keanu. Respect. You play pretend for a living. You run around in leather and shoot guns in movies. It's not exactly saving lives. The insult hit its mark. For a man who had spent decades honing his skills, working with some of the greatest directors in cinema history, and taking on roles that challenged him both physically and emotionally, to have his life's work dismissed so casually was clearly a bridge too far. You know what, Joy? Keanu said, his voice rising for the first time since the interview began. I came here today to talk about a project I'm passionate about, something I've put months of work into, and instead you want to sit here and take cheap shots at my character and my career. The studio had gone completely quiet. Even the crew members who had been moving around behind the cameras had stopped what they were doing. This was no longer an interview. This was rapidly becoming a confrontation, and everyone in the room could feel it. Whoopi tried once again to intervene. Let's just take a step back here. And no, Whoopi, Keanu interrupted, something he never would have done under normal circumstances. I think Joy has something she wants to get off her chest. So let's hear it. Let's hear what you really think about actors and the work we do. Joy, perhaps realizing she had pushed too hard but unwilling to back down in front of millions of viewers, doubled down on her position. Look, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You Hollywood types live in these bubbles, making these big-budget movies about nothing, and then you act like you're doing something important. Meanwhile, there are real problems in the world that need attention. And you think sitting here every day making jokes and taking cheap shots at people is somehow more important? Keanu shot back, his composure finally beginning to crack. At least when I do my job, I'm trying to entertain people, to give them something that might make their lives a little better for a couple of hours. I'm trying to tell stories that matter, that connect with people on a human level. What exactly are you contributing? The attack was direct and pointed, and Joy's face flushed red with anger. She had clearly not expected Keanu to fight back with such intensity. I'm informing people. I'm giving them news and perspective they need to make sense of the world. Keanu leaned back in his chair and gave Joy a look that could have frozen water. Is that what you call this? Information? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like you're just trying to tear people down to make yourself feel better. The words hung in the air like a live grenade with the pin pulled. Joy's face went from flush to pale in seconds, and for perhaps the first time in her career on The View, she was momentarily speechless. But Joy Behar was not someone who stayed quiet for long, especially when she felt cornered. Excuse me, Joy said, her voice rising to match Keanu's intensity. I've been in this business for decades, Keanu. I was doing comedy and commentary when you were still a struggling actor taking whatever role you could get. Don't lecture me about contributing to society. Keanu's eyes narrowed dangerously. And I was working, Joy. I was building my craft, paying my dues, learning from every experience. And for the record, I never pretended to be anything. I worked because I needed to pay the bills, something you might not understand given your privileged position here. The other hosts were now visibly uncomfortable. Sunny Hostin kept glancing between the two combatants like she was watching a tennis match, while Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Whoopi, usually the master of controlling chaos on the show, seemed unsure how to handle this unprecedented situation. Privileged position. Joy's voice cracked with indignation. I worked my way up from nothing, Keanu. I started in dive comedy clubs where half the audience wanted to throw bottles at me. I earned every single thing I have. And what exactly do you have, Joy? Keanu shot back, his voice dripping with disdain. A platform that you use to ambush guests and make them uncomfortable? A career built on saying outrageous things for shock value? That's your legacy? Joy slammed her hand on the desk, causing the coffee mugs to rattle. My legacy is speaking truth to power. My legacy is not kissing up to celebrities like some people do. I ask the questions that need to be asked. Questions? Keanu laughed bitterly. Is that what you call what you've been doing here today? Because from my perspective, it looks more like a personal attack wrapped up in the pretense of journalism. Whoopi finally found her voice. Guys, we need to dial this back a little bit. We're on live television here. And no, Whoopi. Joy interrupted sharply, never taking her eyes off Keanu. If Mr. Reeves here thinks he can come on my show and insult me and my profession, then he's going to hear exactly what I think about his attitude and his arrogance. Your show. Keanu's voice rose to a level that made everyone in the studio flinch. Your show. Last time I checked, this was called The View, not the Joy Behar Hour. And if you think asking loaded questions designed to make your guests look bad is journalism, then you have a very warped understanding of what real journalists do. The accusation hit Joy like a physical blow. She had always prided herself on her interviewing skills, and to have them questioned so publicly and so harshly was clearly more than she could tolerate. Real journalists. Joy's voice was now shaking with rage. Real journalists like the ones who follow you around asking about your personal life. Real journalists like the ones who dig into your relationships and your family. Maybe I should start asking about some of those topics if you want real journalism. The threat was unmistakable, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Keanu Reeves had always been fiercely protective of his privacy and his family, and Joy had just crossed the most dangerous line possible. Keanu stood up slowly from his chair, his full height making him an imposing figure even in the confines of the studio. The movement was deliberate and controlled, but there was something in his posture that suggested barely contained fury. Are you threatening me, Joy? Keanu's voice was now dangerously quiet. The kind of quiet that came before an explosion. Are you actually sitting here on live television threatening to invade my family's privacy because I called you out on your unprofessional behavior? Joy seemed to realize she had gone too far. But her pride wouldn't let her back down. I'm just saying that if you want to play hardball, Keanu, I know how to play hardball too. This isn't some movie set where you can storm off whenever you don't like the script. You're absolutely right, Keanu said, his voice getting louder with each word. This isn't a movie set. On a movie set, people have respect for each other. On a movie set, people do their jobs professionally. On a movie set, when someone is clearly out of line, the director steps in and fixes the problem. He turned to look directly at the camera, addressing the audience at home. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here today to talk about a film that I'm proud of. A film that took months of hard work from hundreds of talented people. Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a character assassination by someone who apparently thinks that bullying guests makes for good television. The studio was now in complete chaos. Producers were frantically trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial. The other hosts were whispering urgently among themselves, and the crew was frozen in place, unsure whether to keep filming or not. Joy, realizing that Keanu had effectively turned the entire situation against her, made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Oh, so now I'm the bully. You're the one who's been sitting there insulting me and my work for the last 10 minutes. You're the one who's been acting like you're too good to be here. Keanu turned back to face Joy directly, and the look in his eyes was something that would be talked about for years afterward. I never said I was too good to be here, Joy. What I said was that I expected to be treated with basic human decency. Apparently, that was too much to ask. Basic human decency? Joy's voice cracked as she practically screamed the words. You want to talk about decency? You've been condescending and rude from the moment you sat down. You've acted like answering questions was beneath you. I answered every legitimate question that was asked, Keanu replied, his voice now eerily calm in contrast to Joy's hysteria. What I didn't do was sit here and let you use me as a punching bag for whatever personal issues you're dealing with. The accusation that Joy was taking out personal frustrations on him was the final straw. Joy's face contorted with rage as she prepared to unleash what would prove to be the most damaging response of her career. Joy leaned forward in her chair, her eyes blazing with an anger that seemed to consume all rational thought. Personal issues. Personal issues. You want to know what my personal issue is, Keanu? My personal issue is entitled celebrities who think they can waltz in here, act like they're doing us some kind of favor, and then get offended when someone doesn't kiss their ring. Keanu's face hardened into an expression that could have been carved from stone. And there it is. The real Joy Behar. Not the comedian, not the journalist. Just someone who resents successful people and uses her platform to tear them down out of pure spite. Spite. Joy's voice reached a pitch that made everyone in the studio wince. You think this is about spite? This is about accountability, Keanu. This is about not letting people like you hide behind your fame and act like you're above criticism. Criticism? Keanu's laugh was harsh and bitter. Is that what you call this circus? Because real criticism involves actual knowledge of the subject. Real criticism comes from a place of wanting to understand, not from a place of wanting to destroy. Joy stood up abruptly, matching Keanu's earlier move, but where his had been controlled and deliberate, hers was erratic and desperate. Destroy? You think I'm trying to destroy you? Keanu, you're destroying yourself right here on live television. Every word out of your mouth is proving exactly what I've been saying about your attitude. My attitude? Keanu's voice exploded with a fury that had been building for the entire interview. My attitude? Joy? I have spent decades in this business working with some of the most talented and dedicated people on the planet. I have worked with directors who demanded excellence, with actors who pushed themselves to their limits, with crew members who gave everything they had to make something beautiful. And in all those years, through all those productions, I have never, and I mean never, encountered the level of unprofessional, vindictive behavior that you have displayed here today. The words hit Joy like a series of physical blows. Her face went white, then red, then white again as the full weight of Keanu's condemnation sank in. But instead of backing down, she doubled down with a viciousness that shocked even her regular viewers. Unprofessional, vindictive? Joy's voice was now shaking with rage. You know what's unprofessional, Keanu? Coming on a show and acting like you're too good to engage with the hosts. You know what's vindictive? Sitting there with that smug expression, acting like everyone else is beneath you. Keanu took a step closer to Joy's position at the desk, his presence now dominating the entire set. I have been nothing but respectful to every other person on this panel. I have answered questions. I have tried to stay focused on why I'm here. And I have maintained my composure even while being repeatedly attacked. If you see that as smugness, then that says a lot more about you than it does about me. Whoopi made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Okay, everybody needs to just take a breath here. We're going to take a commercial break. And no, Keanu said firmly, never taking his eyes off Joy. I think the audience deserves to see this through to its conclusion. They deserve to see what happens when someone with a platform uses it to bully and harass their guests. Joy's face twisted into an expression of pure fury. Bully, harass, you arrogant piece of work. I have been doing this job for longer than some of your movie careers span. I have interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. Don't you dare stand there and lecture me about how to do my job. Then act like you know how to do it. Keanu shot back without hesitation. Because what you've done here today isn't journalism. It isn't entertainment. And it certainly isn't professional. What you've done here today is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that gives daytime television a bad name. The accusation that she was damaging the reputation of her own industry was apparently the final straw for Joy. She began gesticulating wildly, her voice reaching levels that seemed impossible for human vocal cords. Toxic. Toxic. You want to see Toxic, Keanu? Toxic is coming on someone else's show and acting like you're doing them a favor. Toxic is treating the hosts like they're some kind of nuisance you have to endure. Toxic is your whole attitude from the moment you walked in here. Keanu's response was delivered with a calm that was somehow more devastating than any shout could have been. Joy, I walked in here with the same respect I show every interview, every journalist, every talk show host I work with. The difference is that they treat their guests with the same respect in return. They ask real questions. They listen to the answers. And they don't use their platform as a weapon to settle personal scores. Personal scores? Joy was now practically screaming. What personal score could I possibly have with you? I don't even know you. Keanu nodded slowly as if Joy had just proven his point. Exactly. You don't know me. You don't know my work. You don't know my character. And you don't know what I stand for. But that didn't stop you from attacking me from the moment I sat down. That didn't stop you from making assumptions and hurling accusations. That didn't stop you from turning what should have been a professional interview into a personal vendetta. The other host sat in stunned silence as the confrontation reached its peak. Sarah Haynes looked like she might cry. Sunny Hostin was staring at her hands. Even Whoopi seemed at a loss for how to handle the situation. Joy, realizing that she was losing the battle of public opinion with every word, made one final desperate attempt to justify her behavior. You know what, Keanu? Maybe you're right. Maybe I did come at you too hard. But you know why? Because I'm sick of celebrities who think they can coast through interviews without giving anything real. I'm sick of the fake smiles and the rehearsed answers and the pretense that everything is perfect in Hollywood. Keanu looked at Joy for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried a sadness that was somehow more powerful than all the anger that had come before. Joy, if you wanted something real, all you had to do was ask real questions. If you wanted to know who I am as a person, you could have asked about my passions, my hopes, the things that drive me to keep working, to keep pushing myself, to keep trying to connect with people through my art. Instead, you chose to attack. You chose to belittle. And you chose to turn this into a spectacle. And now, after all these years of doing interviews, after working with hundreds of journalists and talk show hosts, I can honestly say that this has been the most unpleasant and unprofessional experience of my entire career. With that devastating final statement, Keanu Reeves turned and walked away from the panel, leaving Joy Behar sitting alone at the desk, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. The studio remained in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's most respected and beloved actors disappeared through the studio doors, never to return. The confrontation that started as a routine celebrity interview had become something much more significant. A moment that would be analyzed and discussed for years to come, and a stark reminder of what happens when professional courtesy breaks down on live television. The audience gasped. The reaction was immediate and visceral. People were on their feet, not applauding, but staring in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a collective sound of shock and outrage. How could this have happened? How could one of the kindest men in Hollywood have been pushed to this point? The answer was sitting right there at the desk, still frozen in her chair, still processing what had just occurred. But here's where this story takes its most shocking turn. Because Keanu Reeves walking off would have been dramatic enough. What happened next, however, would go down in television history as one of the most humiliating moments ever broadcast on daytime TV. Joy Behar, sitting alone at the desk, her face a mask of shock and barely concealed fury, suddenly snapped. She looked around the studio, at the stunned audience, at her co-hosts who were desperately trying to figure out what to do, at the producers frantically gesturing from behind the cameras. And something inside her broke. How dare he? Joy muttered under her breath. How dare he make me look like the villain? Whoopi tried to calm the situation. Joy, let's just take a commercial break and regroup. But Joy wasn't listening. She was staring at the empty chair where Keanu had been sitting, her eyes blazing with a rage that had been building for years. "You know what?" Joy said, her voice rising. "I've been doing this show for decades. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. And I have never, and I mean never, been treated with such disrespect by a guest." The audience, still stunned, began to murmur. Some people sat back down, sensing that the drama wasn't over. Others remained on their feet, unsure whether to applaud or to watch in stunned silence. Joy continued, her voice now shaking with emotion. "He walks in here with his leather jacket and his humble act and his "I'm just a regular guy" routine, and everyone just falls over themselves to worship him. Meanwhile, I'm the one asking the real questions. I'm the one who's not afraid to challenge the narrative. And what do I get? I get called a bully. I get accused of being unprofessional. I get treated like I'm the villain of this story." Whoopi tried again. "Joy, I really think we should take a break." "No," Joy snapped. "I'm not taking a break. I'm done taking breaks. I'm done being the one who has to apologize for doing my job. If Keanu Reeves can't handle a few tough questions, then maybe he shouldn't come on shows like this. Maybe he should stay in his little bubble where everyone tells him how wonderful he is. But here's the thing. His bubble is built on a lie. He's not the saint everyone thinks he is. He's a brand. He's a product. He's a carefully constructed image designed to sell tickets and merchandise. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise." The audience went quiet. Not the respectful quiet from before. This was the quiet of people who had just witnessed someone dig their own grave on live television. Joy seemed to sense the shift, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You want to know the truth?" she said, gesturing wildly at the empty chair. "The truth is, Keanu Reeves has been playing the same character for 30 years. The same humble, I'm just a regular guy character. And people eat it up because it makes them feel like he's authentic. But it's not authentic. It's a performance. It's a carefully constructed image designed to make him seem approachable and down to earth. But the world has changed. And people like him, people who refuse to evolve, they're the ones holding us back. He's not a legend. He's a caricature. He's a brand. He's a product. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise." The studio was now completely silent. Even the crew behind the cameras had stopped moving. Whoopi was staring at Joy with an expression that could only be described as horrified disbelief. Sarah Haynes looked like she was about to cry. Sunny Hostin had her head in her hands. And Joy, finally realizing that she had just said all of this on live television, seemed to freeze. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had just spent the last 5 minutes attacking one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood history. She had called him a caricature, accused him of being disingenuous, dismissed his entire career as a performance. And the audience, the same audience that had been watching in stunned silence just moments earlier, was now staring at her with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. Joy opened her mouth, perhaps to try to walk it back, perhaps to double down even further. But before she could say another word, something happened that no one in the studio expected. From the wings, a voice called out. It was soft, gentle, and unmistakably calm. "That's enough, Joy." Everyone turned. Keanu Reeves had come back. He was standing just off stage, his microphone still in his hand, his expression calm but unreadable. "I was going to leave," Keanu said quietly. "But I couldn't help overhearing what you were saying about me. And I thought to myself, Keanu, if you walk away now, she's going to keep talking. She's going to keep spreading this poison. So I came back to say one thing." He walked slowly back onto the set, his presence commanding immediate attention. The audience parted to let him through. Joy sat frozen in her chair, her face a mask of terror and humiliation. "You can say whatever you want about my movies," Keanu continued, his voice still calm but carrying a weight that made everyone in the room lean forward. You can say whatever you want about my attitude, my demeanor, my reputation. That's your right. But don't you ever, and I mean ever, stand on a stage and dismiss the work of hundreds of talented people who dedicated their lives to making those films. Keanu paused, letting the words sink in. I spent my whole life being told I wasn't good enough, he continued. I was told I was too quiet, too intense, too different, too everything. And you know what I did? I kept working. I kept pushing. I kept believing that if I could make just one person feel something, just one person escape their reality for a couple of hours, then it was all worth it. He looked directly at Joy. You sit here in your fancy studio with your fancy microphone and your fancy opinions, and you think you know what's best for everyone. But you don't know what it's like to be a young actor with nothing but a dream and a determination to succeed. You don't know what it's like to work your whole life to build something meaningful, only to have someone tear it down because it doesn't fit their narrow view of what a successful career should look like. So let me be very clear, Joy. I don't need your approval. I never did. And I never will. Joy's face was now a blotchy red mess. Her eyes were glistening with tears of rage and humiliation. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Keanu continued, his voice now carrying an edge that no one had ever heard from him before. You talked about accountability earlier. Well, here's some accountability for you. You've spent years attacking people on this show. You've made a career out of tearing others down to make yourself feel bigger. And the saddest part is, I don't think you even realize how small it makes you look. The studio was deathly quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Keanu took a step closer to Joy. I want you to look around this room, Joy. Look at your co-hosts. Look at the audience. Look at the crew. And ask yourself, who was really the bully here today? Joy opened her mouth, but Keanu held up a hand. No. I'm not asking you to answer. I'm asking you to think about it. Because the way you treated me today, the way you've treated so many guests over the years, that's not journalism. That's not tough love. That's just cruelty. And cruelty has no place in civilized conversation. Keanu turned to face the audience. I'm sorry you had to witness this, he said. But I'm not sorry I said what I said. Someone needed to say it. And sometimes, the people who seem the kindest are the ones who've had to learn how to be strong. He turned back to Joy. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Joy. I truly do. But I won't be a part of it. He looked directly into the camera one last time. To everyone watching at home, I want you to know something. I came here today to promote a film that I'm proud of. A film that means something to me. And instead, I got lectured about my authenticity by someone who apparently thinks her job is to tear down anyone who doesn't fit her narrow view of what a celebrity should be. He paused, letting the words land. If you're watching at home and you've ever felt like the media doesn't represent you fairly, like they're more interested in creating drama than actually listening to what you have to say, then you just watched it happen in real time. I've been doing this for decades. I've worked with some of the best in the business. And I can honestly say, this is the first time I've ever been treated this way. And it will be the last. With that, Keanu Reeves turned and walked off the set for the final time. The audience erupted. This time, the applause was deafening. People were on their feet, cheering, whistling, crying. It was the kind of moment that happens once in a generation. The kind of moment that gets replayed for years. And Joy Behar, sitting alone at the desk, her face a mask of utter devastation, seemed to realize that she had just lost the battle, the war, and her reputation all in one afternoon. Whoopi tried to salvage the show. Well, she said, her voice trembling slightly. That was certainly unexpected. But Joy wasn't done. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this, she said, her voice cracking. I just can't. Without another word, she ripped off her microphone and threw it onto the desk. Then she turned and stormed off the set, leaving behind a studio full of stunned faces and an audience that had just witnessed one of the most humiliating moments in television history. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing the uncomfortable silence, the audience still standing, the co-hosts exchanging helpless glances. Then, finally, the floor manager's voice cut through the chaos. Cut to commercial. Cut to commercial now. What did you think was the most shocking moment from this incredible confrontation? The way Keanu Reeves maintained his dignity while exposing Joy Behar's behavior was absolutely masterful. And the way Joy Behar stormed off her own show after being completely outclassed was nothing short of poetic justice. If you believe dignity is strength, if you believe standing up for yourself matters, and if you think moments like this deserve to be remembered, tap like to show your support. Subscribe to The Clash for more stories where power shifts on live television. And tell us in the comments, did Keanu do the right thing by coming back to deliver that final message, or should he have just walked away and let Joy dig her own grave? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another explosive moment from the world of entertainment. This is the kind of television that reminds us why we watch, why we care, and why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.